Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Julie Shields Rutina, and I'm the Director of College Planning, Education, and Training at MEFA. And I'd like to welcome you to tonight's webinar on college admissions. And I have my wonderful colleague, Jennifer Bento Pinion, here with me. And Jennifer is going to be moderating the questions and answers. So the two of us will be here for you this evening. Let me just go through a few logistics. I'll tell you a little bit about MEFA. If you don't know MEFA, we're a state authority that was created in 1982 by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And we were created to help families plan, save, and pay for college. And we're still doing that today. We have the state's college savings plans, the U Fund and the U Plan. And we also have low-cost loans, private loans for families who need that type of financing for college. And then everything else we do is we offer free resources and free guidance to families at whatever stage you're in this college process. And so our webinars fall under the guidance, the free guidance that we give. So we're glad you're here with us this evening, and then we hope that you will take advantage of all of the other webinars and resources we have on our website going forward. So we have about, I don't know, 40 minutes worth of slides and information that I can present. And then we're going to leave plenty of time for questions at the end. But if you have a question that's burning, just put it in the Q&A and know that we'll get to it either immediately if it needs to sort of be taken care of right away, or we might wait till the end of a section or the end of the presentation. But put your questions there. We want to make sure everything's answered. If you would like closed captioning, hit the live transcript, the CC button, and you'll be able to see the words that we're speaking across the screen. And if you need to leave, of course you can, that's fine. And we are going to be recording this session and sending you the recording and link to the slides tomorrow. So you'll have that. And maybe that will help. You won't have to take too many notes this evening. And also, if you want to share that with others who might find this useful. So I think with that, we are going to just move right into the topics. So tonight we're going to talk about the current trends in college admissions, and then we're going to talk about how a student develops their college list, meaning the list of colleges that they're going to apply to. And then we're going to talk a little bit about campus visits, the actual application process, and we'll touch upon financial aid. I will share that MEFA has lots and lots of webinars and information just about financial aid, and you really should have about an hour webinar on that as well. So please do find those financial aid webinars as well, so you'll be really knowledgeable about that piece. But we'll just touch upon some of the things that will get you thinking about things. And throughout, I'll share free resources with you. All right, so what are the trends in college admissions? Well, one thing that continues to be a trend and sometimes continues to even grow is that students are applying to a greater number of colleges. And part of the reason for that is there's a form called the Common App. We'll talk about that a little bit, but that's an admissions application where a student can fill that out once and then send it to many different colleges. So that makes it nice and easy sometimes to just add a college or two. And so for that reason, and another reason is that there are many very competitive schools out there, very selective schools. And so if a student is applying to some very selective schools and isn't sure they will be admitted, they tend to apply to more colleges. So that's another reason. Those are a couple of reasons that students are applying to a greater number of colleges these days. And that makes something else a factor, which is something called demonstrated interest. So what is that? What that is that back a number of years ago, when students were not applying to so many colleges, if a college received an application from a student, they thought, great, this student really wants to come to our college. And then they would review the application. But these days, sometimes a college knows that or doesn't know. Does the student really want to come to our college, or are they just throwing us on as an add-on, or they're not as certain that just by receiving an application that your student is really interested. And so that's why sometimes they look to other things to see if there is interest, such as things like, did the student contact the admissions office? Did the student visit the campus? Did the student email with an admissions counselor or meet an admissions counselor at a fair, college fair, things like that. All of those things might be able to give the institution a little more confidence that the student is really interested in their college. And so that can be a factor in the admissions process. A third trend is social media, right? It's a trend in our lives, really. And so, what are a couple of things about social media? Mainly, what I'd say about social media is that all colleges use social media, and I think most students use social media. So, it is actually a very nice way for a student to connect with a college and really hear about what is the college talking about, what is the college posting, and they can stay connected to a college that way. So it's really an added tool for the most part. um, the one piece of warning about social media is just that we just encourage students to make sure that any social media they have out there, that they wouldn't mind what it looks like to a future employer, to a future college, to grandparents, the general public, just to be careful and make sure that their social media profiles, you know, that they get seen. And so, just to make sure about that. And cost continues to be a huge factor. We know, and we're going to touch upon financial aid, and you can learn a whole lot more about it. There's a lot of financial aid out there to apply for, but cost is a factor. And I guess where that's a good thing is that students and parents are paying more attention to that, and you should. So paying attention to that as one of the criteria in choosing a college, because you want it to be affordable, whatever that means for the student and for you as a family. So it's good to pay attention to the costs as one of the many factors. The pandemic shifted so many things for so many of us. And one thing that happened that has ended up being sort of a good thing in the admissions process now is when the pandemic happened and colleges couldn't bring prospective students to campus, they couldn't give tours, all of that, they shifted and they started doing things virtually. They started making sure there was a virtual tour on their website. They started putting in place virtual programming like admissions webinars and ways to connect with college admissions administrators and students, current students, so that students could virtually have conversations, ask questions, learn a lot about the college. And that did not go away. So now colleges are saying, please come visit us. We have everything in person and we also have everything virtually. So that can be really helpful for families. We'll talk a little bit about test scores as we go along, but there's a high number of test optional colleges, meaning that students can decide whether they want to send a standardized test school to the school or not. That number had been growing, although of late we've heard of a few well-known institutions who have started to add back and a test requirement. So I'm not sure exactly where that's going to go. But the way it stands now is there are some schools that require a standardized test and many, many that do not. One other piece is that at those test optional schools, admissions numbers have increased, so more students have been applying to colleges that have not required a test. And so that's just something to know as well, that when a student is deciding how many colleges to apply to, that um, there can be more selectivity at some of those colleges. So it's probably a good idea to apply to a few extra schools. And also, because so many students are applying to a number of institutions, there are longer wait lists. And so if you are waitlisted at a college, meaning you're not admitted, you're not denied, a wait list could be very long and really no guarantee that you would be admitted. So another overarching important piece of information I like to give is that this process has a lot of moving pieces. So it's a really good idea to stay very organized with it and try to do that up front. So here on the screen, I'm showing you MEFA's College Application Manager. You can download that and use that as a tool. You could also just use a regular spreadsheet, or a whiteboard in your kitchen, or some tool on your phone or computer. But however the student likes to keep track of things, however you like to help support them, it's a good idea to keep track of the colleges you're interested in, the admissions deadlines, the financial aid deadlines, what parts of the application are required. Do they need a standardized test? Is it optional? Any notes? If you visit the campus, you want to take some notes. I think students, we think you're going to remember everything, but once you start going to a number of different colleges, it's easy for them to kind of blur together. So it's a really good idea to keep track and of your impressions and notes and all of the important details. So at this stage, in the early stages, you want to have fun with researching colleges. You really want to keep an open mind. I know that sometimes students go into this process having an idea of a college they might like to go to because maybe a sibling went there, or a cousin, or a friend. And that's fine. But I think it's a really good idea to keep an open mind, both students and parents, because there are so many terrific colleges out there and so many things to consider in finding a college that's going to be a right fit for you. So on the screen are some tools for searching online for colleges. So you can use these tools to just get a head start and look at a number of different institutions. So collegenavigator.gov is a great site where a student can go in and say, I'd like to stay in Massachusetts and I'm interested in engineering and I like football or something like that. And it will narrow a list of colleges that sort of have all the criteria you say that you're looking for. And then you can begin to go through that. And then it gives you lots of information. So on the screen, we have UMass Boston, and it says it's a four-year college, it's public, it's in the city, and it gives things like the graduation rate, the average annual cost, the median earnings. So it's a good way to just kind of quickly look at a lot of different institutions and start to say, oh, yes, I want to learn more, or that doesn't seem so interesting to me. College Scorecard is another tool that can help you. It gives even more detailed information about, what the price is. The price isn't always the sticker price, which you'll learn when you learn more about financial aid. It's really, what is that price minus what type of financial aid can you receive there? So it gives information about average net price, student debt of graduates, alumni salaries, all of that. Big Future is a website from the College Board, and they have a great college search on there. And MEFA Pathway is MEFA's own college and career planning tool. And it's a free tool. Students can set up an account in MEFA Pathway at mefapathway.org. And actually, it does many things. Students can really take some fun skills and interest tests if they're just kind of curious about, they don't really know what they'd like to go to college for. And then they can learn about a number of different careers, and then learn about a number of colleges that have different programs that lead to those careers. And so there's also a great college search in there, that will do the same thing. A student will put in their preferences, and it will narrow down the colleges as the student begins to look. So, what factors should a student consider when they're thinking about going to college? There are so many, and it's hard to know until you get going with the process of how important some of these factors are. So, one big one is, the institution size and location. But up front, as a student begins this process, they might have no idea if they would rather go to a large school or a small school, or a school that's in a city or that's in a rural area. So it's sometimes going to take some exploration of a number of those different types of institutions to start to get a sense, or even a visit to some campuses to get a sense and say, it's really quiet around here. Maybe I'd feel bored. Or the opposite, if it's an institution in the city, oh, this is really crazy. I don't know if I want this, and different students will react differently to all of those things. So, but that's important. And so students throughout this process will start to figure out what feels right. Um, Institution size can be important. Um, Class size at different institutions can be important. Is your student a student who likes to, maybe would prefer to sit in a large class, listen, take notes, and then, get back to their dorm room and process that information, and sort of learn that way on their own? Or is your student a student who wants a small class of 7 people where they get to talk and share the whole time and be engaged that way right in the classroom? College has both of those types of classes, and it's helpful for a student to kind of know themselves and think about that, depending on where they apply. Academic fit is really important. So colleges always put a profile out there on their websites of, what did last year's class that they admitted look like? What kind of GPA did they have from the students have from high school? What kind of test scores did they have if they had to take a standardized test? Um, and students can figure out some of that when they learn more about colleges too. But student really wants to be on a campus where the students are like them academically, and do they want to study all the time, or do they want to have more balance and do a lot of other activities and study? Those type of things. So very important, um, for a student to figure that out. Now, if a student has a specific intended major in mind, then it's important to go to a college that has that major. But I will share that um, many students change their major. So that's just something good to know, that if a student decides to change their major and then they don't like the college, they should make sure that it's good on all accounts. And then learning style, that maybe goes back to that classroom size thing, and the types of classes that are available, because a student, hopefully through high school, has a general sense of their learning style and how they study and how they learn, and all of that. And you want to make sure that that's going to be supported at the institution that you're going to. Some of these things can be best seen from being physically on a college campus, although if you're looking virtually and talking to some current students, you can figure out some of this too. So things like campus culture, activities, um, does the campus have a strong sports culture, for example? Is it a campus where in the fall, every Saturday is a huge football game, and that's the activity? That's what everyone's all excited about on campus on the weekends. Many students will love that, and some may not. So it's important to know, is there a religious culture that, where a lot of students, attend religious services, or if a student likes the arts a little bit more, is there a good theater program? Are there dance programs? Things like that. So just a good idea to make sure that you sort of fit into all of that. Most colleges have study abroad programs, career and internship services, um, but good to talk about those when you're talking with college administrators, just to make sure and see what the extent of them is. And then, of course, affordability. You really do want to learn about the financial aid that's available at a college, and we're going to talk about how you can look into that and just make sure it's going to be affordable. And that doesn't have to be a reason to not apply up front, but that will definitely come into play when you're choosing a college. All right, so I've mentioned college visits a lot, and just because you really can learn a ton by visiting colleges. And in fact, if there's a college you're interested in California, it doesn't mean you have to make a trip out there, but you probably want to visit like colleges nearby to get a sense of that piece we talked about: city, rural area, suburban area, large, small. You want to get a flavor for all different types of colleges. You could always make an informal visit to a college, especially younger students. You might want to go to a sporting event, or a theater production, or just walk around the campus. Campuses can sometimes be very pretty places. So you can always do that. But as you get to be a junior in high school, it's a good idea to make it a formal visit when you go. So in other words, by making it a formal visit is contacting the admissions office, letting them know you're going to be on campus, maybe signing up for a tour or signing up for a presentation. And that way, they mark that down too, that you were there. That shows interest, that we mentioned can be important in some places. So when you have a formal visit, then you can walk around the campus. You can visit the academic buildings. You can visit the dining halls, the housing. You can ask questions of the people in the admissions office and current students, who are great people to talk to. So I would recommend doing a lot of that and keeping it fun. It doesn't have to be an all-day thing. You can drop in, take a tour, visit somewhere else another time, but this will give you, the student, a real sense of differences between different colleges. And another place you can connect with different colleges is at a college fair. So you sign up for a college fair, and you'll see that at different college fairs, they could be there could be hundreds and maybe even thousands of colleges who attend, and they can be from faraway locations, which is also great because if you really can't travel all over the country to visit places, you can at least get to know some people before, while you're still in that narrowing down researching process. So two websites you should go to: nacacfairs.org and neacac.org, for upcoming events. And sign up, check out the list of the colleges who are going to be there. You might want to make a plan. I want to make sure I see these 5. You want to stop by, you want to talk to people, and that's a great way to make a connection to different colleges. And then all of this, hopefully this can be a fun process for a while. And then at some point, you really do want to start narrowing your list to the colleges that you're actually going to apply to. And that will happen over the course of time, from now all the way through the fall and winter of senior year of high school, where you're narrowing it down and deciding, okay, these are the 7 colleges that I'm going to apply to, for example. And on that list, you should have a mix of colleges that it's likely you'll be admitted to, That's good to have a number of those because basically the goal is to have some choices in the spring of your senior year. And students can know that by, again, understanding the academics of the current students, their own grades, where they fall, and from some of this gathering this information to see what types of students they're really looking for. So have a number of likely colleges on your list. And then you can have some possible colleges on your list. And what does that mean? That means, yes, you basically sort of match the type of student that is on that campus and with the interest in the activities, and you seem to be a good match. But it might mean that it's a selective school. It's competitive. And what that means is that they receive more applications from qualified students than they're able to admit. And so it's just not always possible that you will get in. But you put some of those possibles on your list, and that might be a good number too. And then a reach school, we sort of say that's those colleges where you're never sure if you'll get in or not. And I tell people that all the Ivy League colleges these days tend to be reaches for everyone, because the Ivy League colleges, as an example, many others too, but receive so many more applications from qualified applicants than they're able to admit. So it makes them so competitive. And you just never know. You could have all the best credentials, but still not be admitted just because of the selectivity and the size of the institution and how many people they admit each year. But it sure is a good thing to have some of those reach colleges on your list as well. If you have a dream school that you really are, so excited about, well, of course, you're going to put that application in, but just make sure you have some likelies and possibles on there as well. All right, I'm going to take a sip of water, Jennifer, just to ask if there are any questions before I move into the college application types.
So no, there aren't any outlying questions at this time. I'm just going to share a couple links that were requested, and we will mention that we'll share this presentation after following. So you have all this great information
Oh,
at your
great.
fingertips.
Thank
Okay.
you, Jennifer. All right, so we'll talk about the college application types. So there's colleges all have a regular decision process. And what that is that they usually have an admissions deadline in early January, and the student applies, and then they usually hear back from the college maybe in March or April. And then they have to let the college know that they will attend by May 1st. May 1st, most years, tends to be college application deadline day. So that's the college signing day. You might have heard it called that. So that's what the regular decision process looks like. And all colleges have that. But many colleges have started to have earlier processes. And one of those processes is called early action. And really, all that is that they have an option for an earlier deadline. So that means the deadline is usually in November or December, and the student applies in November or December, and then usually hears back from the college by December or January, sometimes before that winter break, when school lets out. And so students really like that because sometimes it's just nice to know, oh, phew, I got admitted to one college that I like. And so at least I know I'm going. I can relax on my winter break, and I'll wait to hear from my other colleges. And with early action, students apply earlier and they hear back earlier, but they still don't have to let the college know until May 1st on that college signing day. And then there's another process called early decision. And that is a little bit special because we call it's a binding agreement. So basically, when a student applies early decision to a college, they usually have a deadline in November or December. And what they're saying to the college with their application is, if you admit me, I will say yes and attend. I will accept. So it's kind of a promise they're making to the college. And so the college knows that when they apply. Now, from a college's perspective, we mentioned demonstrated interest. That's a good thing from a college perspective. They know that this student is demonstrating interest because they're saying, if you admit me, I will come. So that can be a good thing on the admissions side. That looks good to a college. However, there are a number of things I think as a family you should really think about before a student applies early decision. Because if a student applies early decision, not only are they making the promise that they will attend, they're also promising to withdraw all their applications from the other institutions, which means they will never hear back about whether they were admitted, what their financial aid would have been at any of the other institutions. They're really narrowed and focused on this one institution. So the only way that a student should apply early decision is, number one, if they want to go to that institution far and above all of the other colleges. That's their number one, hands down. That has to be in place. Secondly, you have to be sure that you can afford it, because and so you really need to do your research up front, and that means using the calculators that the college provides to get an estimate of a financial aid offer, so that you have a sense of, okay, I put in my information and the college shares that this is the type of financial aid offer we would receive. You want to be pretty sure that you would be able to afford that college. If you get an aid offer that you just can't pay, I guess you can't go, but the college really wants you to research that. That's what that binding agreement is all about. So that's the second thing. And the third thing is, I think you have to be comfortable with the fact that you will never know what the other colleges were going to give you in financial aid. And I'll just say it, probably you are going to receive more aid from the other colleges, because usually a student who is being accepted early decision to a very competitive college um, probably has other offers out there, and maybe from some other colleges that are willing to sweeten the pot with a merit award or something. So you just have to be comfortable as a family knowing that in this instance you're not going for the most affordable option. You're going for this best fit on that academic basis. But again, comfortable that it's affordable and comfortable with you don't know what you might be giving up. All right. And then rolling admission, many colleges have just an admission start date where students can start applying and they can continue for a longer period of time, such as even November through May. And so if college has rolling admissions, you can apply whenever, but I would suggest, if you know you're going to apply to that college, apply on the early side, just to make sure you are taking advantage of any financial aid that is available. I would just err on the earlier side with rolling admissions. And then there's open admission. So that's a college that admits most students for most programs anytime. And an example of that is our community colleges in Massachusetts. So a student who graduates from high school and wants to go on to college can always start at one of our community colleges, even if the grades weren't stellar in high school. There's that chance to really buckle down and do great at a community college. So that's a wonderful thing. One thing to note is there are some programs at community colleges that have small classes, like there are some nursing programs that are limited in the numbers that they admit. And so just know that it doesn't mean that a student is promised to go to that community college in the program that they want in a given year. That promise isn't there because some programs have limited numbers of admitted students, but they can attend the community college, start taking classes, and go on from there. So let's talk a little bit about the college application forms. There's one called the Common App, and you find that at commonapp.org. And that's usually available in August before a student's senior year, where a student can go onto the Common App website and begin completing their Common App. And that's the application where students can go in, complete the one application, and then send it to many different institutions. And once they list the institutions where they're going to apply, some institutions might ask for an extra essay or an extra question, or we want to see a list of jobs. And so students will be able to keep track of what the schools that they're applying to need in that application process in the Common App. So, but it does make it nice and easy to be able to apply once and send it to many colleges. And other application programs like that are the Universal College app and the Coalition app. So all of those have that feature where a student applies once and can send it to multiple institutions. So when a student looks on the college website to find out, what they need to do for admissions, it will say you can apply using the Common App or the Coalition app, or it might just say you can apply using the Universal College app. Or a few colleges still have their own college application. So you might apply to a college that says, here's the application right here on our website. And there are some, once in a while, you can find a paper application out there. Again, I've seen that at some of the community colleges too, but that's slowly going away. And then here are all the components to a complete college application. So your application may include the application form and the high school transcript. Those two, pretty much across the board, are going to be part of the application. Then some colleges might require standardized test scores, and many will have that as optional. Most colleges will require 1 to 3 letters of recommendation, not all, but many. And most colleges will require an activity list or a resume. Many colleges also require a personal essay. And then the last 3 are less common. So some colleges will require an interview, an audition, or a portfolio, usually for specialized programs. All right, so what are colleges looking for on an admissions application? Well, the first thing the most important thing a college is looking for is they want to make sure that the student is going to be able to come to the college and excel and do well and succeed and go off and do great things, graduate and go off and do great things. So that means they want to make sure that the student can handle the work at the college. And that's why that academic fit is so important. So that's really number one, because if the student can't handle the work and is not successful at completing, then that's not a good thing. So this is number one, super important. So the way that colleges assess that is they look at the rigor of a student's high school program. So they want to make sure that the student took, academic classes, possibly some college level-ish classes like an honors class or an AP class. And they like to see that a student push themselves a little bit. So we sometimes get the question, is it better on a high school transcript, is it better to have an A in a subject in a regular class, or a B in a subject that's an AP class or an honors class? And for the most part, colleges will tell us that they prefer to see the student challenge themselves with harder classes. So it's a good idea if a student takes a few of those classes if they're offered. Now, some high schools don't have honors or AP classes, and that's fine. And the college can know that because high schools have their profiles and they talk about, what's available at their high school. But they do like to see that the student tried to push themselves a little bit. They also like to see improvement over time. They like to see exceeding the minimum requirements, and they like to see that their classes and their grades are aligned with their college plans. So if they want to go into a science field, how did they do in those science and math classes in high school? There is a sliding scale for mass public colleges and universities that you can find online of um, those colleges have certain grade point averages that students need to attain to be admitted. If they don't quite have that, they can sometimes take a standardized test to balance that out. So it's not a bad idea to look at those scales online. And so let's talk about standardized tests. So what we're talking about here mainly are the SAT and the ACT. Those are two standardized tests, and colleges accept both of them. And so, you know, if a student is applying to some colleges that require a test and some that where it's optional, they just should take one of the tests. And preparation is key, and there is a lot of free test prep. So a student can spend a little time. And the best thing to do probably is to maybe take a practice of each of them and honestly see which tests they felt more comfortable with, because the tests are slightly different and sometimes a student likes one more than the other, and then really prepare for that one and try to go out and do really well on that test and then submit that where it needs to be submitted. That's probably the best way to go. You can see that for the SAT, you want to go to the College Board to get information. And for the ACT, you want to go to the ACT website. Now, a couple of new things with standardized tests are the SAT is going to be digital starting this spring. So, um, I think that's a good thing. People feel differently, but it's going to be a little shorter. It's going to be 2 hours instead of 3, which I've heard is, one of the main complaints about the test from students. So that's going to be great. They're going to be able to go to the same test site or their school and take the test on a computer, even their own computer. And it's going to have the same, 1600 total score. And it is going to be a little bit different, this digital SAT. It's going to be what they're calling adaptive. So as they begin the test and start to answer questions, depending on how many they get right, in the second section, they may be asked harder questions or not. And so it's really going to take a student through and sort of let them showcase whatever they are successful at. So it's really important to start that test out, really strong so that you can really have a chance to showcase yourself through the rest of it. The ACT is going to have the option of being a paper test, or some sites will allow for a digital test, but they haven't made the other changes. So that test is still going to be 3 hours long either way. And I believe they're going to continue to keep offering both options. So some students might like a pencil test, and some might like it on the computer. But either way, go to those websites, take some practice tests, and then pick a test and go for it, and try to take advantage of that free test prep. And then you will send test scores to schools that require a standardized test. But if a college does not require it, it's test optional, and many are, and some are test blind. Test blind means don't even send the test. They're not going to look at it. But test optional, a student should send the test score only if it's going to enhance their application. So if you can see a college that has a certain average SAT score, and you come in a little below that or right at that score, you really don't need to send that test to a test optional college, because it's not going to add more to your application. But if you come in a little bit higher than that, you certainly want to send that in, because that's going to be a nice boost to your application. And you'll see at the bottom of this screen, fairtest.org provides the list of over 2,000 test optional colleges. And then I mentioned that all colleges will require, or many colleges will require an extracurricular activity list. When you're in the Common App, there's a place to put all of your activities or resume. And basically, colleges just want to see what you do outside of school, what's outside of academics. So it doesn't need to be a huge list. What a college would rather see is that you have a couple of interests and you have pursued them through activities during the high school years. However, that doesn't mean that it has to be a sport or it has to be play an instrument. It can be that you have family responsibilities. It can mean you have a job. It can mean you work in your community. It can be anything. It's anything how you spend your time outside of your schoolwork. And they just want to see that because they would like to have a well-rounded person on their campus who will bring some of what you're learning and what you're doing to the campus. And colleges usually require an essay. And this is the chance in your application to really choose to show something about yourself that can't be seen from just looking at your grades or your activity list. So you want to write about something that's meaningful to you, and you want to share about yourself when you're writing. And let me go to the next slide just to show on the Common App, they give you a list of essay prompts. And you can pick any of these, and you can pick whatever you want. These are just prompts to get you to think about what you might like to write about. So let me just read a couple of them. Reflect on a time when you questioned or challenged a belief or idea. What prompted your thinking? What was the outcome? Think about that. Or discuss an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of personal growth and a new understanding of yourself or others. And then you can see at the bottom, share an essay on a topic of your choice. So these prompts are just to get you thinking about what you want to write about. So what I'd say is it's a good idea to start early. The summer before your senior year is a great time to just start writing these essays. And the language about just some crappy first drafts. Get things on paper, and then you can go back, edit, see what feels right. Once you get the essay to a point where you feel pretty good about it, you can share it maybe with a parent or a friend or even a teacher, and just hear some feedback. It should be you choose the topic, you pick what you want to write about it and how you want to write about it. But a little feedback is can be good of, oh, I think you should, you know, go further into telling that story, or you went on a little long here. I think you can shorten that. That's the type of feedback that I think can be helpful from family and friends. But you definitely want to get started on it early so that you have time to revise it. And just know you don't want to plagiarize. That's the worst way to start a college application. And you just want to, be able to proofread it, spell check it, all of those things so that it looks good when you're going to send it to the college. And I've heard a good piece of advice is before you're going to submit that essay, read it out loud in front of a mirror and see, are you smiling? Does it make you laugh? Do you feel good when you read it? If so, that's probably how it's going to be received on the other end. That's probably how the admissions counselor is going to feel about it. Whereas if you read it out loud in front of a mirror and it bores you to tears, that's probably how they're going to feel about it when they're reading it at the college too. So make sure you feel good about it and you feel good about sharing some personal things about yourself. And then letters of recommendation. Many colleges require between 1 and 3 letters of recommendation. And I would say follow the directions there, because if you submit 5 letters of recommendation and they're asking for 2, they're going to read two, and you don't know which two they're going to read. So pick the people that you want to write these letters of recommendation and follow the directions and submit the right number of letters. Really, most of the time they say it's good to have maybe one of your junior year teachers in your major subjects: English, math, history, science, foreign language. But also most important is someone who knows you well, that can write some very specific details about you and your academics and as a student. That's the most helpful. So think about that. Think about who to ask. If you can ask spring of junior year, sometimes your high school will have a process and a form. So you can ask your school counselor and take that form to the teacher and request that. And then without a doubt, be sure to say thank you and thank the person for doing that. Now, this is less common. So only only a small number of colleges require an interview of every candidate. But if they do, you need to do that. And in fact, if they offer an interview, I think it's a good idea, because what that's going to do is really have you make a connection to the college. You can ask questions, they get to see you. That can be a really good thing. So if a college offers it, they could offer one of two types: informational and evaluative. Informational is really just for your information and theirs, to really get to know you a little bit and have you be able to ask some questions. Evaluative means it's a definite part of the admissions process, probably, scored in some way, and part of the admissions decision. So the way you can prepare for this is just by doing a little research about the college, because you want to know about the college. You don't want to go in and ask a question that you can find out on the first page of the college's website. But also, you would just want to think about yourself too. Think about, what classes you've liked in high school this year, what you do after school, what you like about your job, what books you've read lately, what you and your friends have been focused on, what other activities, what home life is like, because really the person is just going to have a conversation with you. Um, but you just want to have thought about some of those things that they might ask you about. So just be prepared to answer some of those open-ended questions. But again, the people who are doing this type of work, interviewing college applicants, it's because they really like talking with 18, 19-year-old students. And so it should be a comfortable conversation. Be yourself. And yeah. So then all the hard work will be done. You'll submit these applications, and then it will be time for the college to send you an admissions decision. And what types of decisions can you receive? Well, you can receive that you were admitted. Yay, that's the best. That's what you're hoping for. Student is accepted. We do see some of this lately, that sometimes students are accepted, but they might be accepted for January semester or something. So just be prepared that that can happen, and then you'll have to think about that. If you were planning, you wanted to start in September, but you really like the college, you'll have to weigh that. You could receive the answer that you're deferred. So let's say you apply early action or early decision, and the college says, we're not going to make a decision right now on you. We're going to defer your decision to the regular applicant pool. That can also happen. Or you could be denied. And let's just say it right up front. Most students are denied at some colleges. That's just very common. As I mentioned, colleges are very selective, they're very competitive. Some are very small and bring in only a small number of students and have students applying from all over the world. So your denial is not really about you. It's about the applicant pool at that college. And again, so many students are qualified that aren't able to be admitted in a given year. So It never feels good to be denied. It definitely feels like rejection, but please move on from that. It's not, it really isn't about you. It's about the process and the college and the other students who are applying that year and how many they can admit and what their goals were, their admissions goals that year too. So um, please don't take it personally. And the last one is you could be waitlisted, meaning you're not accepted, but you're on a wait list. So if people don't accept admission at that college, there's a chance they could pull you off the wait list. That's a hard one because if you get the decision that you're on the wait list and you want to go to that college, you should let them know, yes, thank you. I'm glad I'm on the wait list and I'm still interested in being admitted. I want to stay on the wait list. And you want to keep telling them that even as time passes, because sometimes what happens is students make other decisions and then they choose a college. And if you still want to go to that college, you want to keep telling them that you're interested in it. But at the same time, you want to move on mentally and you want to think about where you're going to put a deposit down May 1st, because you have to move on, because there's no guarantee you'll be accepted off the wait list. So you'll move on and you'll put a deposit down somewhere else. If by chance, sometime later in the summer, you get a call that you could move off the wait list, you can choose to do that, but you will probably lose your deposit at the college where you deposited. So I'm going to take another breath before we move on to the financial aid section, just to see if there's anything else that we should talk about, Jennifer.
Yeah, so we did have one question that I thought that we could bring forth because it's a common one. It goes back a little bit into your presentation, but do colleges want to see a major selected in advance during that application process?
Such a great question. To be honest, usually no. Because again, and I don't have the statistics right off the top of my head, but I've seen them recently. It's a large percentage of students who change their major, from freshman year to sophomore or junior year. And so colleges know that. And so for that reason, you know, that doesn't make such a difference in a lot of cases of what the student says their major is up front. Now, there are some programs where it really does matter. So if you're applying to a nursing program or to an engineering program or to another very specific program that may be competitive and small group of students, then yes, if you want to be in that program, you need to declare that up front. And they do want to see that because they want to make sure you want to be a nurse. So in certain cases where you're sure about the program, yes, you want to declare that. But as far as declaring your major otherwise, it's a much more loose, again, because colleges know that students, I mean, part of what you're doing when you get to college is you want to explore a little bit and really find your path. And so it's a good thing too. And it's perfectly okay. And most colleges don't make you declare a major until sophomore or junior year.
Great, thank you, Julie. That's
Thank you.
all we have. Outstanding, thank you.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about college affordability, but I'm going to say it again. Please, please look for MEFA's other webinars. We really get going on our financial aid webinars in September about how to apply for financial aid and all of that. But check out our website. We have lots of resources about financial aid. So here are some things, though, you can begin to think about. What is the cost of attendance and the net price at a college? So colleges will publish their prices, but what's most important for you as a family is what's the net price? And what is that? That's the published price minus the financial aid that you're going to receive, because that's the amount you're going to need to pay. And that's an important figure for you. So I'm going to move down to the next slide and then come back. So one way to know the net price is to go to a net price calculator on a college website. All colleges have them, even though some are better than others. But if you just go in the search bar on a college website, type net price calculator, and you will get to the calculator, and it will ask you questions about your family finances, the student's academics, perhaps. You put that in, and it will provide you a personal estimated net college price for you as a family. So for the student and for you as a family. And then it will display, federal and institutional aid. So aid from the federal government and what the college will give. And if it's asking you about your students' academics and GPA or SAT scores, it probably is going to give you a calculation for a merit-based award too. So the more detailed questions it asks, the more probably accurate and good estimate it is. But it's of course dependent on what you input, but it can give you a real sense of the type of financial aid that's available at that college and what you potentially could receive in financial aid. So that's not a bad thing. If you're interested in a few different schools, just go and look at their net price calculators. And then the other important thing you want to do is just find out, just like you'll find out what the admissions requirements and deadlines are, you also want to find out what the financial aid application requirements are and when the financial aid deadlines are. They're usually different than the admissions deadlines, but very close in time. And then you just want to understand at the college, do they just offer need-based aid based on your family's finances, or do they offer merit-based aid based on the student's academic and extracurricular activities, sports scholarships and academic scholarships, things like that. So you can find that out from the usually the financial aid section of the college's website. And then you can always start looking for private scholarships now as well. Just like we showed you some college searches at the beginning, there are some scholarship searches where you can put in information about you as a student, and it will give you a list of scholarships you can begin to apply to, and you can just begin to narrow them down, and again make a list of ones you might want to apply to, deadlines like that. But it's not a bad idea to just get going on that. And then next fall, when you are a senior, this is how you will apply for financial aid. The main form is the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And it's required by every college and university. And next fall, when you're applying, you'll be applying using the 2025-26 FAFSA. And it should be available on October 1st this year. And it will be asking you about your 2023 income taxes. That's the year of the income tax that will be connected to the FAFSA. Let me finish this slide, then I'll say a few words about the FAFSA. Some colleges, in addition to the FAFSA, require the CSS profile form. It's required by about 200 colleges and scholarship agencies. That's also available October 1st. Also going to ask about your 2023 income. So if your college requires that, you'll need to do both of these forms. And some colleges have their own specific financial aid application, which again, you can find on the website. I see fewer of those, but there are some. So look for that as well. And all I'll say quickly is, if any of you have been paying attention to, you don't even have to pay attention these days, it's all over the news. The current seniors in high school who are applying for financial aid and applying to the FAFSA right now for a fall enrollment, this has been an unusual and sort of terrible year, because the FAFSA was delayed 3 months and then it came out with errors, and families are struggling to get through the process this year. So but the good news is the reason for all of these struggles is the form has been overhauled, and it's much shorter, much easier. So when we get through these challenges of this opening year, where there've been some glitches, this process should be pretty easy, contrary to what you might have heard from people with older students. So hopefully the financial aid process next fall will be a piece of cake. But we're here to help you through all of it. And then just a couple of other programs that I think are a good idea to look into and research. One is mass transfer. That is a program here in Massachusetts that if a student starts at a community college and then transfers to a 4-year public institution in Massachusetts, there are some huge financial benefits. It can be a very affordable college process. So there's things like guaranteed credit transfer, tuition credits, tuition freezes. You can find all the information on mass.edu/mass transfer. And I know that Jennifer, my colleague here, is in the process of putting together a webinar all about mass transfer. And so if you come back to MEFA, in a month or so, you'll probably see that we'll have a webinar about that program this spring. And another program is called Tuition Break. And that is a program where students can attend public institutions in neighboring states. And as long as students attend certain programs, they can potentially pay in-state Massachusetts fees and go to an out-of-state institution. So it's worth looking at that NEBI list to see if you're interested in any of those programs and could take advantage of that big break in tuition as well. And MEFA did a webinar on this, so we have a recording of this on our website if you go to our website and search tuition break. And here is a calendar to keep you on track through spring and summer of junior year, all that we talked about, and then the fall of senior year into the winter of senior year and the spring. And what we didn't talk about, we talked about the timing of submitting financial aid applications, applying for private scholarships. That could happen next winter as well. And then in the spring of your senior year, MEFA runs some webinars entitled Understanding Financial Aid Offers and Paying the College Bill. And those webinars talk through what an aid offer is going to look like from the different colleges, how you compare them, contrast them, read between the lines so that you can make an affordable college choice. And then how do you end up paying the bill that you have left after financial aid is taken into consideration? So those are great programs to help you. So we're just here for you every step of the way, and I hope you will take advantage of all of these different programs. And then you will hopefully choose your college by May 1st. And here's the college and career web portal that I mentioned at the beginning, MEFA Pathway. It's free, open to all students. You can go in, create a free account, and here are all the resources you can find inside. I didn't mention there's lots of financial aid and scholarship information in there as well. And it's very engaging for students, depending on their level. In fact, students as early as 6th grade can go in and start to use this, and they receive sort of a personalized engagement that's a little bit different than a high school student would receive. So this can be a great tool for students to get started just thinking about their future. So right now, I think after this webinar, you'll already be signed up for some MEFA emails and you'll hear about our events, but you can always go to the MEFA website, look through our events and join again, and I hope you will. You can explore and research colleges, have fun with it, and begin creating that college list. And then here are all the ways to find us on social media. And in fact, one of the things we're getting really good at on social media is putting a lot of scholarship information out there. So definitely connect with us in whatever ways you like to on social media. I believe it's, Jennifer, is it Instagram where we put most of the scholarship information?
Yes, Yes, Instagram. Yep,
So that's a good one.
yep.
And we have a podcast. I know I sometimes forget to call that out specially because we have the MEFA, it's called the MEFA podcast, everywhere you get your podcasts. And we have some great guests, good conversation. And John Hughes is our colleague, and he's the main host, and he does a terrific job with the MEFA podcast. So check that out as well. And you can always call MEFA with questions, email us at collegeplanning@mefa.org, and we're happy to help you. And do we have some questions now? Maybe.
We do. We do have a couple of questions. All right. So the first one is, have you seen or heard of colleges rejecting an applicant only because they can tell that the student is applying to that college because it's a safety school?
I see what you're saying.
Mhm.
I've been in this business a long time, 30 plus years or something. And I guess over the 30 years, I've heard a story or two like that. Um, but I believe that the admissions process has gotten so complicated. Colleges are receiving so many applications from so many students, that I I think the focus now is really in just crafting their class and finding the best students who are going to make up that class in a given year. Um, so that's what I think the focus is. Um, Yeah, I really do, because anything else is speculation. It's speculation to say that we're not going to admit this student because we think that the student would prefer to go to the other school. And just so you know, over the years, one thing that has changed is colleges can't see the order of how students, apply or list people in the financial aid forms or anything like that. So that's all been taken away. And I really believe that colleges really just work to create their best class for that year, given all of their applicants.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought that was a tricky one.
Yeah.
Okay, there's another question here. So a parent has a daughter who's a junior in high school and taking the SATs in May so this May 2024. So at that time, they will just have a short list of colleges at that point. How does that work as far as other colleges that the student may apply to? How does that process work?
Yeah. Well, in a way, it's when you take the SAT, it's going to give you the option to send it to certain colleges right there and then. But you can hold off and not do it at that moment anyway. And then that leaves the decision in your hands about when and how you want to send, who you want to send your SAT scores to. So, you can either, so you can always just send it after the fact to whatever colleges you want to send it to. That's easy. And this is sort of adding on to the question, you might even decide not to send them right away to the colleges, even if you know them. You might decide to wait, see what your scores are, and then send after the fact as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I guess just one other question, that it's more around the financial piece. If a student gets a private scholarship, is it possible that a college won't take it, accept it? How does that weigh into the aid, their federal aid?
Yeah, and we get into this a lot in the financial aid webinar, but I'll try to explain it without my handy slides that I have in that
Oh,
webinar. So yeah, so if a student gets a private scholarship, I'm going to tell you most of the time that's a wonderful thing. That's a good thing. But if the student, and most of the time that's going to fit in, college is expensive. And even after financial aid, there's usually some other piece that maybe isn't covered where that scholarship can fill in the gap there. Um, if a student is applies to a college that, and this is now, here's where I'm getting into more difficult are just concepts that we're not covering here, but a college that's really meeting full need with a lot of financial aid for that student. Um, and the scholarship is going to, far exceed what the costs are. A student can do a couple of things. They can call the college and they can say, I'd like to maybe not take the work study that was offered to me, or I'd like to not take the federal loan that was offered to me and instead use the scholarship. And most colleges are very accommodating with that. If the student is just receiving, you know, almost full grant aid and receives another big outside scholarship, yeah, the college might have to rework that offer a little bit. But in the cases that I see that, it's very rare. It's just very rare. And I would say that I don't know what percentage of the time, but that any outside monies are going to be a good thing.
That's great. Thanks, Julie. And I know we do. I shared a link we have to our other events and recordings that we have along the financial aid topic as well.
Oh, that's great.
Um, and I think that probably covers all of the questions that we have.
Well,
Yeah,
that's great. Good questions. And, as you go through the process, I think probably more questions will come up. So please just know that you can reach out to us, attend more webinars, and we try to stay very much in the moment to continue to let you know what's happening with admissions and financial aid all the way along. So thank you so much. And thank you, Jennifer. And have a good evening, everyone.